All right, so Ryan Jacques here with Fight Game Analysis, and today we have the honor and the pleasure of having the Savage herself on the show, Gillian Robertson. Gillian, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Now, I know we don't got you that for that long today, so just kind of want to jump into it right away. You recently had a fight announced, UFC 297 against Polyana Viana up in Toronto. I know that one's got to be exciting getting back to Canada.
Oh, I'm so excited, honestly. I feel like this is an ideal matchup for me. I got lots of time to prepare January 20th, so we're about 3 months out now. And obviously, it's an hour away from where I was born, my hometown in Niagara Falls. I get to
Yeah.
fight in Toronto. Just to be in front of the Canadian crowd again just makes me so excited.
Now I've heard I've watched I've never been up to Canada, I've never attended an event up there, but when I watch the events on TV and from what I've heard like the broadcast team announce and stuff, it seems like they get hype up there. It seems like it should be a good show, like they're going to be geeked about it.
Oh yeah, they definitely come out for their people, you know? I want to say a couple months ago there was just a card in Canada and it was absolutely insane. I think it was Vancouver, I want to say.
Yeah.
And they had a couple Canadians on the card and I want to say every Canadian actually won that night on the card too, and I think we can expect the same out of this Toronto as well.
Yeah, you can't beat it when you get that. So is this going to be the type of thing where you got friends and family hitting you up prior to the show, everyone's trying to get tickets to it, you expect people to be there, you know,
I expect everybody to be there, but I also expect that it not to be easy to get tickets. Like this is a
yeah.
big card. Every single fight that I've seen announced so far for this card has been huge. So it's just an honor to be on this card too. It's such a giant card, and like obviously, like I said, in Canada, an hour away from where I was born.
Right, absolutely. I heard it seems like it's going to be Volkanovski who's going to be headlining that one, and it's like, his popularity is at a super high right now, so that means there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on it. So that's great for everybody.
Oh yeah, I've heard. Well, obviously, it's kind of a toss up since Volk just fought of whether
I
I've
know.
heard either it's Max or it's Volk, but either way,
Oh,
Max
you can't
versus
go. I'm
Max or
sorry.
Wolf versus Taporia is just the fight to make. Like it doesn't matter either one of them. I'm like I would love to watch that, and I think it's a gangster fight no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. You can't go wrong with that. So you're training down there in Miami now, right?
Yeah, I'm training at the Goat Shed in Miami.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a little bit about that. So you were training. Um, Now, from day one, when you came into the sport, when you got introduced to it, you were training right away with Dean Thomas, correct?
Yeah, and I still am. He still trains with me at the Goat Shed, so we've been together for the last 12 years.
Okay, okay, and that's just an that's just like uncommon. From what I've seen, where it's just you come in, somebody get introduced to the sport, and right away they're introduced to somebody who's at the highest level, who can just start teaching them correctly from day one, versus picking up some bad habits along the way, switching some trainers, find what works. That ended up working out really cool. But what I want to ask about is what made you settle down at this gym?
So for a while there, well, obviously I've been with Dean since day one. We went to ATT for a little while, and then during COVID, we kind of broke off from ATT, and we're doing our own thing and kind of just traveling to different gyms. So I was working with Dean primarily and traveling to gyms all up and down Florida, just getting work like with different people. And I just needed a place where it's more consistent that I could get different bodies to work with. And I felt like Goat Shed was the best place, the best fit for me. They have a bunch of 125 boys that are ideal work for me. We have a bunch of girls now, and like I said, obviously Dean still works with me to this day.
Yeah,
So the mix of Dean and Goat Shed just seems like kind of the championship make.
nice, nice. Now I'm not familiar with Goat Shed. I got to be honest with you, and that's actually what I was going to ask because when I see a gym like ATT, it's like I don't know, it's world renowned, right? It's one of the biggest ones that people talk about. It's like a massive facility. I got to imagine that you've got a whole bunch of training partners in there, whatever you want. You've got a whole plethora of coaches. I know you work with Dean, but what's it like? How big is Goat Shed?
Goat Shed's definitely a smaller gym. We'll probably have a pro team of I'd say like 30 to 50 fighters tops maybe
That's
where
still it still
yeah.
seems big to me, but
I feel, but it's like honestly, we're a fight gym. Like it's all fighters. Every person in the gym is a fighter. ATT, I want to say their pro team has to be 100 plus, maybe. Like ATT is absolutely huge, and I feel like
so
that's
that's
the
insane.
yeah. It's like that's where I feel like you run into issues though, because you can kind of get lost in that where there's too many people there, and there's too many bodies for too few coaches to look after. You know?
Right. That was
Where
kind of going to be, and that was kind of going to be what I was thinking. Like, how does it work? Like, so when you go in there, is it just like you're kind of doing your own thing? Do you just, I imagine different coaches specialize with different stuff. So is it like you search out one or search out one of them, to like hold the pads for you on something you want to work with? You have one person who, since you work with Dean, is he kind of game planning the whole thing from the top down and setting you up or?
for me specifically, it's always been Dean. Like he's been I guess like the main like brain behind my everything that I do since the beginning. So
So like even when you, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
uh,
Keep interrupting.
Yeah, Dean's just been the 100% mastermind behind everything. Everything of my style.
So when you were in ATT, did you ever like work with any other coaches at all, or it was just him?
Uh, yes and no. I would like work with coaches occasionally, but primarily it was more just training partners than I would like. Dean was the one who I was getting my main technical advice from always, and he was the one game planning for me going into fights and really the one looking out for me.
Nice. Yeah, so in that sense, that's kind of he's the stabilizing force, even going from bouncing around gym to gym, and now you're getting down to this one. It's still the same voice in your ear, it's still the same guy and stuff. So I imagine that works out great. But you said you've got enough sparring partners there and everything. So it's like my thought going in would be that would be one of your potential negative drawbacks to having a smaller gym is that you're just going to have less people to work with, so you're going to have less looks and things like that. But if you got that, then it's got to still be great.
Oh yeah, I feel like I have all the looks I need. I have a lot of attention from my coaches now, and I have everything that I need to really make that title run.
Nice, nice. All right, so your last fight, you were in there against Tabitha Ricci, I believe is how you say her name. Now I know before going into that one, you were saying, "Hey, I win this fight." It was when you cut down to strawweight. You're just like, "I win this next fight. I don't expect to be ranked, but I want to fight somebody who is ranked." She was your ranked opponent. Kind of came up a little bit short in that one. Didn't turn out the way you want. So when you look at a fight like that, do you study the film from it? Do you and do you individually try to like pull things that you can learn from it, or is that something you leave up to Dean and then you guys just talk about it and you don't really like to break down your opponents or look at your past film?
I guess with that one specifically, I haven't really broken down just because I feel like I don't think it was like me performing in there. I feel like there was a lot of things outside of the fight that
Mm.
impacted it that I feel like I don't know, just going into the cage and like I haven't even watched the fight once, honestly. I usually do like to break down my fights though, do like to break down my losses, and I like to break down my wins too because I feel like I can take just as much from those. I Dean does do a lot of it, but I also feel like it's important for the fighter themselves to develop that kind of mind, that kind of fight IQ to be able to have that ability to make those smart decisions at a high pace. So I definitely do like to try to break down that. And I also like to just watch fights in general. I'm a huge fight fan because of that, because I feel like the more you watch fights, the more you can break them down, the more you can see shit and see like opportunities or like what I would do in that scenario or things like that. And it's just constantly getting you thinking.
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. I remember. I don't know if you're like a boxing fan or anything like that, but I remember that's actually where I came up. That was my introduction into just combat sports with boxing. And you get a guy like Floyd Mayweather who used to always say, I never watch film. I never break down my opponents. I leave that to my coaches. And he used to say, I do it because they're going to look different when they're in the ring with me. So I don't want to know what they look like when they're in with somebody else. And that sounds slick, but I can't help but wonder, a guy with as high as fight IQ as him, is he just saying that? Is it just another layer to his persona, but really he's in there breaking down the film all the time and stuff like that anyways. So it's good stuff. So it was funny. You mentioned that you weren't feeling yourself or whatever during that fight. I remember when I was watching it, I heard Dean saying some of the same things to you in the corner. It seemed like he wasn't, this was, I forget the words he used, but basically it was like, you're not performing the way that we trained. Right, you're not looking the same that we looked in camp. And one of the things that I always tell people is, you look at a football player in the NFL. We see him play 17 games a year. We watch the NBA; they play 80 games a year. Baseball's out there playing 150 games a year. Fighters we see like 2-3 times a year. Right, we don't see him that often. Everybody has an off night. But if you're out there performing 50 nights a year and you have an off night, nobody cares. You're out there performing 2 or 3 times and you have one night where everything isn't clicking. All of a sudden, it's the end of the world. And everybody wants to talk about it like it's this huge thing. How hard is it for you as a fighter to come in there and really try to make sure that you're at 100% on fight night, that you're not leaving stuff in the gym beforehand? that you're not overtraining, anything like that?
I guess that's all the learning process. Because this last time, that's really what it was. I feel like I was just overtraining.
Mm,
Going from I fought Piera Rodriguez. I was in a 3 month fight camp for that, and then I had 4 days with no fight, and then I signed my Tabitha Ritchie contract that Thursday. So I fought Saturday and had the contract by Thursday. So it
yeah.
was like it was just my from my first time at 115 to my second time at 115, I didn't realize how difficult it would be to make that turnaround on my body. So, the first cut went super smooth. I was 117 the day before. I was
Nice.
feeling great, like getting extra snacks and things like that. Whereas, like, this second cut, I think it was 122 maybe the day before,
Hmm.
where I ended up I cut like I think 6 pounds water weight. I did like 5 baths. It was just an absolutely terrible cut, but my body just wasn't I was doing all the same dieting, all the same working out. My body just wasn't letting go of the weight because I was just overstressed, overtrained, overworked. And, yeah, I feel like that was a big part of it. Just like me learning, me growing up. I feel like I've literally grown up in the UFC.
I
So,
know it's crazy. It's crazy to look. I mean, you're 28 years old, and looking at your record and the amount of fights that you got in the UFC, it's like the majority of people who have that many fights are gonna be a little bit older. So it reminds me of like Max Holloway. Like talk about learning on the job. He came into the UFC, he was like 19 or something, you know. But I mean, I guess in a way, it's a good way to learn, right? Again, like getting hooked up with a pro coach early. It's like you're getting thrown to the sharks, but if you can swim, you're gonna make it. So that's great stuff. So talking about that cut a little bit, how you feeling about it now?
I definitely feel I feel like I need the time. That's what I determined after the Tabitha thing is that I
Like
just need the
time in
time
between the fights?
in between the fights and before the fight. Like that was a 2 month camp and a turnaround, like a quick turnaround. So I feel like I need like a month in between and then like 2 month camp at least. This is luckily I have 3 months, so it's a lot of time to get my body back down. And I had a lot of time in between too, where I needed that time to kind of get away from everything for a little bit
Right.
after that fight. So yeah, it's definitely nice that I have a lot of time to make the weight, and I feel like it's going to go smoothly as that it did whenever I cut for the PR fight. I'm going to be able to get my weight down to like 117 the day before and make it an easy cut and make it so it's not a worry in my mind the week of.
Nice. Now, what about those eating opportunities? We got Thanksgiving, we got Christmas coming up in between now and then. I mean, how does that work? You just
Uh, Unfortunately, I've already texted my mom and I told her I'm like I don't think I'm going to be coming home for either this year. Got to let her know early, so then let him
she's
down
still
softly.
is she still up in Canada?
No, they're my parents are in Port St. Lucie. My grandparents are still up in Canada, but
Oh, okay.
Port St. Lucie is about 2.5 hours north of Miami. That's where I grew up mostly. It was in Port St. Lucie.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
So you're still down there training in the same, still down in Florida and stuff training. Nice.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
works. That works. How long? When did you move down? How old were you?
I was 7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Cool. So you got a little bit of time there. You still remember and everything. It wasn't like you came over when you were 2 or something.
yeah, exactly.
Nice, nice. All right, so let me ask you this. USADA, big announcement recently. UFC is going to be dropping them. They're going with the new organization. I don't remember the name of it. The guy who I think he was the head of the team that was interrogating Saddam Hussein or something like that. You know, quite the thing to put on your resume, I imagine, when you're applying for new jobs. But but it seemed like once that got announced, that all kinds of fighters came out with bad stories about USADA, right? And it wasn't necessarily that they were like the quality of the test or the quality of the results or whatever wasn't in question. It would seem to be like the way that they were conducting themselves, right? Fighters were complaining like these guys are waking me up at 3 a.m. on fight week to take this test. Like this is messing with my sleep. Isn't there something they could do better? Isn't there a better way to achieve this? What's your personal experience with them?
I've never had a bad experience like ever with USADA. I feel
Oh,
like besides them just doing their jobs, which is like obviously that can get annoying sometimes having somebody follow you around when you don't have to pee for 2 hours. You know, it's like
yeah.
besides that, it's like they've done nothing. Like they always come at a reasonable time. They always I feel like even like I tested positive for marijuana on one of my fights, and
Hmm.
like through the whole process they like walked me through it and were like literally like holding my hand, just helping me get through like all the legal things with Nevada State Athletic Commission. So I'm like, I feel like I've had great interactions with USADA, and I don't like I said, besides them doing their job that's a little bit annoying sometimes, I've never had anything bad.
That's good stuff, though. It's like there's no reason to be jerks about anything. We're all just here earning a living, right? All just doing our job. So, but yeah, it just made me think about it when it came out because it seemed like almost from a fan's perspective, right? From a guy who's on the outside, it seemed like it almost just blew up out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden, you had Jeff Nowitzki and Hunter. I can't remember his last name, Hunter Campbell, maybe from the UFC, and they were saying bad stuff about USADA, and then USADA is releasing these statements about Conor McGregor, and then all of a sudden all the fighters are coming out saying stuff. I'm like, wow, there must have been some bad blood, behind the scenes, like just underneath the surface that a lot of people didn't see. But awesome to realize that they weren't messing with you, and you were just having a good experience with them.
Yeah, like I've definitely heard the horror stories about them coming at 6 a.m. and things like that. But I'm like, for
Yeah.
me, they've never. It's always been like midday. They come in, and it's always been, I don't know, just like I've had the same USADA girl the whole time I've been in the UFC that's come to
Oh,
my house. So
that's
it's like
nice. And you kind of develop a little relationship with her. Hi, how's it going? Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
exactly. And then like I said, we get to hang out for like 2 hours some days.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. All right, so one last thing that I want to touch on. I probably should have worked this in when I was asking you about the cut, but I heard you mention you work with the UFC PI.
Yes.
Now, I come from like I mentioned, my experience was boxing, right? That's where I originally came up, and so to me, when I hear the UFC PI, like it sounded amazing to me when it first got announced. Because when you go to these boxing gyms, I mean, nobody's got any money. Everybody's using, bro science to try to figure out the best strength and conditioning. Guys are being tough guys when it comes to the weight cut, just like not eating and drinking for 70 hours before the fight and stuff. I mean, just crazy stuff, right? Wearing the sweatsuits 2 weeks before the fight, and it's like as soon as you start drinking the water again, you're gonna gain that weight back, right? But it's just you see these guys doing so much stuff. So and it's so detrimental long term for your body with just yo-yoing too much or cutting weight incorrectly. And you have to think about how does it affect the fighter in the fight? How does it affect the fighter long term? So, long story short, when I saw them come out with the UFC PI and when I see some of the things just again from the outside looking in that they seem to offer, it seems phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Especially like you said with the weight cut stuff. Like literally I text the dietitian every like once every other day, probably letting him know my weight. He will there's an app that he'll send me my meal plans on, just like what I should be eating, different options, different things like that. So it's like I don't have to eat the same thing every day. They send us meal plans too. Like they'll send us frozen meals too through our fight camps. They obviously, if you're in Vegas, it's convenient for all the
Right.
fighters. They get free like PT, physical therapy. They it's absolutely amazing, like everything that they have there, all the technology, and even like when it came to like deciding what weight class I wanted to be in, they have like I don't know it too sciencey for me to know, but it was like a body mass like
Yeah.
it weighs literally everything in you. So it told me like my bone mass, my organ mass, like how much my muscles weigh, everything like that, so that it can tell me what weight class I should be in, determined upon that.
Yeah, I saw the first guy I saw talking about that was um his nickname, they call him the captain. I think his first name's Eric. It's the guy that he trains like Henry Cejudo and a whole
Yeah,
bunch of other
yeah.
fighters. Yeah, and he was talking about, he's like, he was working with Pitbull from Bellator. And he was like, yeah, we went down and we do this thing and this scan and they can tell us if we can make the weight safely and how much muscle mass we may have to lose or this or that. And I just thought, wow, that's the complete opposite of the bro science, right? That's exactly what you want to do and be healthy about it and learn and everything. And it just seems phenomenal. But so for you as a UFC fighter, that is that free of charge for you?
Yeah, as a fighter, then everything there is free of charge for us, but a lot of it's all in Vegas. So being
Right.
a fighter in Florida doesn't necessarily help you.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I just remember it because prior there was a big boxing fight recently between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence. And Terrence Crawford's coach actually said that he took him down there for a little while, but they charged him. He was like, man, it's expensive. But guys, if you can ever get your fighter down here, it is the best place I've ever been in the world. Like it's just an awesome thing. So, but I figured that for their fighters that are signed to them to the UFC, it's like you're not going to charge them going in. So, and they've got so the only thing. Oh, there we go. So the only thing, my guess is the only thing that they don't they don't have, like you mentioned, they have like massage therapists there and there are dietitians that are working with you and all kinds of stuff like that. They just don't do anything like technique wise. They don't have trainers there who are training you to actually fight, correct?
I don't think that they have actual like fight coaches, but they do have like strength and conditioning coaches there on staff as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I just wondered that from a standpoint of like, would a fighter ever complain about favoritism? Like, well, you've got the actual coaches who are employed by the UFC that are down there training. So that made sense. At least that's the way I thought I understood it. So that made sense to me. It's like you show up with your own coach and they've got great facilities and you can train there if you want. But it's not like they're employing an actual a fight coach, so to speak, that's going to train you. So that's awesome stuff. All right. So before we let you go here, I just got a couple, like a few questions that I'll just kind of fire off rapid fire. And then you just kind of answer them with whatever comes in your mind or first, just kind of some fun little questions and before we wrap it up.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Number one, submission or knockout?
Submission.
That one wasn't hard to picture though, right? Favorite food outside of training camp?
With pizza.
Pizza's a classic. Oh, just ever since I was a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles growing up. I've always loved pizza. All right. Big fight coming up. Recently got postponed. Got to imagine we're going to be having it, who knows, mid 2024. Stipe or John Jones?
I gotta go with John Jones. I kind of feel like he's untouchable in the ring, honestly. Outside the ring, it still seems a little bit different. But in the ring, there's nobody who's on his technical level or who can see the sport like he can. He just makes such smart decisions all the time when he's in the cage.
The guy's something else, right? Yeah. Yeah, the guy's something else. Like in the cage, he is just, seems like everything is just clicking. I was wondering how he was going to look moving up to heavyweight. We only got to see a glimpse of him in there against Gon, but it'll be interesting. But yeah, I agree with you. It just seems like he's the whole package. Even when we go back and look at some fights, like Cormier gave him a really tough one. Alexander Gustafsson, Dominic Reyes had won some rounds. Like there's been guys who have challenged him, but he's just one of those guys that always figures out a way to come out on top. All right, toughest opponent in your career?
Oh, I'll probably say so far she left me with the only one who's left me with a little mark, Tyler Santos. Got nice little 11 stitches in my nose for her. So
Something to carry with you, little memento.
yeah, exactly.
All right, so being a fighter, I imagine you've traveled around a little bit. Favorite city?
Um, Probably the coolest city I've been to is Rome.
Rome.
Yeah, I'm like just being out like by the Colosseum and thinking about like this is where like this is like the beginning of our sport in
Yeah,
its essence essentially.
right.
It's an amazing feeling being there.
And it's so cool seeing old world stuff, I'll call it, right? Like America, we're so young, we're just a baby. The nation is not old at all. And you go over to places in Europe and stuff, and you see like old architecture and the churches and the Colosseum and stuff. And it's pretty cool.
It's mind blowing.
It is. It is. All right, last one. We'll wrap it up here. Favorite activity or hobby?
uh Probably just hanging out with my dogs. Go to the
That's
park a
it.
lot.
The
That's
ones
about
that
it.
the ones that you've been bullying to take pictures with since '95, right?
Yeah, those two.
Oh, that's good stuff. All right, Jillian, thank you. We'll wrap it up here. I know we've had you for a little bit of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Best of luck to you in your fight coming up. Again, UFC 297, January 20th. Everybody tune in. Leave us, where can people find you?
At savage_UFC on Instagram and Twitter, and then just make sure to watch me choke this girl on January 20th.
Absolutely. I'll be linking all of your social media down in the show notes and stuff like that so people can catch it. Again,
So,
thank you so much for coming on. Best of luck in your next fight.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.